Hi guys and girls, welcome to the Budapest Speed Shop. Recently I visited Hungary and I went to a really interesting museum where a guy named Galamb József or József Galamb was born, and they actually started a dealership, a Model T and a Fordson tractor dealership. So since I belong to the Model T club, I thought maybe some of you would like to see this, and I'm gonna attempt to translate from Hungarian to English from my Hungarian video. So come with me, let's go to the city of Mako in Hungary. His name is László Szilágyi, and they are the one who operating this building. They actually formed a classic car club, a local classic car club, and they are the one who's running the show here. I was asking him, what is that building behind him? And he's saying this was the building what the Galamb brothers built because Joseph Galamb sent 6 Fordson tractors from the US to them to start their Fordson tractor dealership. And this was the year of 1921. So this became the first Ford dealership in Hungary with these 6 tractors. And later on, cars joined the lineup. And then they actually worked with those tractors and repaired all of them, what they sold. And this dealership was operating until 1940. And here comes Zsolt with his Model T. I invited my friend over to drive his Model T as well. So let's go inside and look around what we see inside. This is the other side of the building, which you just seen a second ago. And this is where the repair shop was. And here's Zsolti with his Model T. So he dressed up appropriately. This is a lot of fun. So I asked him what's wrong with his car, and he's saying like nothing really. Actually, it's running pretty well. So these are the original buildings. So I asked Laszlo to tell us more about it. So he said the Galamb brothers built this building based on contemporary Detroit style. So basically, they built it as a small dealership, and these are the bays, the repair bays, the original repair bays, what they built. So I asked him to let's go around and look around. And the little extension on the side, that's also original, and that's where the actual stable engine used to be, what was running the transmission lines. So let's go inside. The first thing we see is a nice Model T, and right next to it, a Fordson tractor. The Model T guys know that, but Henry Ford really liked agriculture and put a lot of effort in making the farmer's life easier. So he early on started to make mid-sized tractors for the everyday farmer. And as part of the workshop, they actually found one little piece on the wall, and they didn't know what that was. And finally, they figured it out. That's basically a shaft holder up on the wall, and that's a moving shaft. And that moving shaft is moving all the machinery, the lathe machine and the drill and everything else. And they had actual belts what taking the run off of it. There are some elaborate examples of this in the US, in the Henry Ford Museum and many other museums, what you can see. So they collected these machines. These machines are not original to the shop, but they collected all of them to be able to display it to the visitors how this was actually done. He's saying his dad is also a classic car and old tool or accessory enthusiast, so he's gonna find a grinding machine what he's bringing in. So here's the cheating. This is an electric motor which attached to a stable engine, and the electric motor pretending to turn the engine, and basically that's what runs the belts. Normally it was run by one of these stable engines, and then they were just puffing away and then running the shaft, and you can see all the belts were the motion was taken off of that main shaft, and then running the machinery. So there's going to be a grinding machine as well here. You can see the belt is not coming off because those drums are a little bit arched. So the archness keeping the belt on these drums. But this one is a drill, and then very soon there will be a grinding machine as well. They found these tools and this whole setup in one of these old shops in the surrounding area. They do have a lot of young visitors, and they're able to explain how it works for the younger generation, so they can see that, which otherwise they would never see this kind of operation. They also collected a junk engine, and they're gonna attempt to make a model of how the planetary transmission works and how the engine works in this Model T. So this is a work in progress here, so they can see how this whole thing was put together. He's saying that Joseph Galamb was working with his team on developing an engine, the planetary transmission, and then the engine, which would have a removable cylinder head. So that was a group effort to develop this engine for Henry Ford. But they were all Hungarian immigrants. Farkas, Balog, and Altenberger. They were all in one team and they were working on developing this engine. They worked very close with Henry Ford, and they designed also the conveyor belt what built the cars, which the idea came from a butcher shop. And they very closely designed the car. Later on, Joseph Galamb was the head of the carburetor shop as well. So they're trying to make example of this engine. It was a bobbit bearing in it. It wasn't like the modern bearings where you can change it. You actually had to pure the bobbit bearing. In the Model T Museum, there is actually a working workshop where you can see that process done. And here's this example of the Fordson tractor, what the Galamb brothers started their operation with. The only difference is it was a different color. So before Joseph Galamb sent these tractors out, he repainted them red, white, and green. That wasn't the Mexican flag, that was the Hungarian flag. You can see there are different compartments up on this barrel-looking thing. The first, it was the water for the radiator. Then there was some sort of petroleum product, and then the gasoline. So they were able to start on the gasoline and then change over to the cheaper petroleum product to run the engine by. And this engine was running with anything. This tractor was not only sold, but also being contracted out as a work machine. So not all farmers had the money to purchase these machines. Therefore, the brothers actually figured it out. What if we just work with these things? So they went out to the fields and did work for the farmers with it. These tractors revolutionized the Hungarian agriculture because there was a lot of soldiers died in World War I, and actually the women were able to operate these tractors as well. So they sold a whole bunch of them. You can see the transmission line output here, that basically the belt drive output there, where they could operate all kind of agricultural equipment with it. It was quite a dangerous operation, by the way. Many people lost their limbs, but yeah, we have a lot better machines nowadays. But this basically was a very early, very usable, small-sized tractor, which was a big step forward in the Hungarian agriculture. And using these Fordson tractors, they were able to advertise the Model T as well. So they were able to do a dual operation here. But the agriculture part was the main line. This looks like a magneto to me, so yeah, he's verifying that, yeah, this indeed is a magneto. Basically, the motion energy generates the sparks and doesn't need any batteries. This touring Model T, which now owned by the museum, arrived here from California, and it was in a possession of a Hungarian family for 3 generations. And then here's the Hungarian Auto Club badge from a long time ago. So when the old seller heard where the car is going to go to, he actually lowered the price and was able to make a deal with them. It needed a lot of repairs. The roof was in a really bad condition. The top was in a really bad condition, and they needed many other things. But he's saying that it might be somewhat close to the original color. So it was always a car that was indoor and survived many years like that. So this is one of those cars that actually remained intact and it was not snatched off from the end of a field and being restored or rebuilt. It's basically a car that remained somewhat original, like this radiator. I was telling him that this is an original radiator with a round tube. The later ones, the more modern ones, have the more efficient ones, but you can see there's a little mistake in a little image there, and you can see that these are round tube radiators. This is the older one. The more modern one, just like the more modern cars, have a modern core, and then they actually work more efficiently. But even the radiator basically left untouched. This thermometer it's actually disappeared on the way here on the boat. Somebody stole it by the time it got in, so they had to replace it with a new one. This is an aftermarket accessory. It was not original, although it's a licensed part. So if you buy one of these thermometers, it comes in a Ford licensed product bag. It's really interesting to me because I have one on mine too. Then I asked him to show us the engine, and Here's an early setup where the coils are inside the firewall, not outside. But most of the engines basically were the same, remained the same throughout the manufacturing process. They made about 15 million of these vehicles. So you can see the coils there, they're sticking through the firewall. And the newer ones actually a little bit more flat because they have the fuel tanks up on the front, like mine. Mine is a late model. Last year they made this. And you can see the coils inside. They're made out of wood, so they're wooden coils in a coil box. So basically, while you're driving the car, you could mess with them theoretically. And you can see there is the exhaust with a heater, what goes into the carburetor. The air goes in unfiltered. This is the main jet adjuster and the choke next to it. So you can actually adjust the main jet while you're driving. You can adjust the mixture, and then there's the throttle linkage what comes through. Here's the generator. The generator is a gear-driven generator with a cutout on top of it. But you can still see a belt, but the belt original job is just to run the fan. But now there is an add-on water pump, and the opinions are somewhat mixed in the Model T world. Do you need a water pump or you do not need a water pump? And then I tried both, and I just removed the water pump. It runs great. Some old guy told me that the Model T runs the best when it boils, and I have to agree with him. And there's always had some problems with this water pump. It's actually rises, so it basically has a thermosiphon system where the heat rises and it starts circulating on its own as long as you have enough fluid in it. So it's theoretically, it really doesn't need a water pump. If you go in a parade or something, I can see why, but I drove my Model T in Nevada in the middle of the summer near Vegas, and it's like absolutely, they had no problem with it as long as your system is clean. This car is also equipped with a starter motor. Earlier versions did not have that. Then you had to crank it. But this one has a starter. They started to advertise it for women so they can actually start it. They don't have to mess with the cranking part. It doesn't have any fancy electric relays. It's basically just a switch what connects the wires, and then the starter will go. Here is a mechanical Uga horn. This mechanical horn was actually really loud like this. The only problem is sometimes that shaft what you're pushing is disappearing from it. And there is no door on this side. You can see the silhouette of a door, but it's really technically a three-door touring. So you can sit the mom and the kids on the back, and then the little boy and the dad in the front. But you really didn't have too much space to get in from the left side. So therefore, for a long time, they didn't even install a door on the left. I guess that was some sort of a cost saving. Here comes a little driving lesson on the Model T. So on the left side, you see an arm. The arm has two options. So basically, pull it halfway, it will position the left pedal in the middle or neutral. If you pull it more, it will activate the parking brake. The left pedal has three positions. If you press on it, it's first gear or slow gear. If you let it up, it's actually going to the high gear. The middle one is the reverse. And then the right side, the right pedal is the illusion of the brake, which is a commodity. You don't really want to use the brake pedal too often. Then you have two levers on the steering, and the left one is for the ignition adjuster, pre-ignition. So when you want to crank it, you retard it to make sure that you don't get a kickback. And then the other one on the right side is the throttle linkage. When you're pushing on those pedals, you're activating bands, you're squishing bands. And the bands have a carrier, a metal carrier, and then the inside is a lining. And the lining was made out of an asbestos material at first, and then later on they had some cottons, and there's all kind of versions. And in the modern era, they put in Kevlar. The problem with the Kevlar, I seen on several Model T tours where I participated in, that Kevlar can flip over, and it will overheat the transmission so much that the whole thing can explode inside, and it just breaks everything. So there's no free lunch. You either have to decide you want to change the linings or you want to change the transmission. There is no halfway. I found the wooden versions and the wooden linings working in my car for the last 15 years, and they're great. So I think I'm going to just stick with that. But this is a preference. It's a Model T preference. You basically need to choose what you think is the best for you or for your car. Then I was mentioning the movie Cars, the cartoon Cars, where the meter, the tow meter, was going backwards. And I think where they got that is from Oatman, Arizona, where the locals were contracted to drive these kind of cars across the hills because the fuel tank was under the front seat. And if they went up on a really high incline, the car had to be driven backwards to make sure the fuel will get to the carburetor, because these cars did not have fuel pumps or pressurized tanks. So that's where this whole idea came from. Later on, they fixed this problem by moving the tank from under the seat to up behind the dash. And then they have a little collection of original tools, or somewhat original tools, but basically came from the same time period. And you can see some wrench sets and some original Model T tools, what came with the tractors or with the cars. These are quite familiar to me. And they collected a couple of coils and a couple of other tools there, what they have. So here are the coils. These are wooden coils. They have 4 coils for each cylinder. And you can see there is a place where you can remove it. There are the connectors where the coil box will touch the coil. You can remove this part if you need to service it or change some parts inside. There's a little clip that holds it on, that little door. And then you can see the points, and these have to be really elaborately set. It's not an easy thing to do, or an easy thing to do if you have the machine. So it's only got 3 points. I think the telegraph machine had the same exact kind of coils, but on those, the bolts were sticking out a little bit longer, and then there was a little nut what you put the wires on. And I believe that maybe these coils came from the telegraph, because the telegraph was earlier than the Model T, so I guess maybe they just used it from that. So you can see the positive comes on from the bottom, and then one is coming from a timer. The timer basically grounds it, and then the spark comes out from the other connection. So these cars have a magneto, which consists of permanent magnets installed on the flywheel, and that's where you got the voltage to run these one of these coils. And when you wanted to set it up, basically they had a shop machine, which was a flywheel, basically what you hand cranked, and then with that you can actually set up these coils. And that's the best way to set it up. They have some digital versions and some newer versions, but this is the original way to set it up. It's actually a different hobby to service and collect those hand cranked magnetos for adjusting the coils. The Model T Museum in Illinois, you can see one in operation. It's really fascinating to watch. They have other vehicles like this bicycle. So I asked him, what is that? And he says it's a Weiss Manfred early bicycle from 1941. He said the reason why it's here, because they have seen photographs where it's like an old bicycle was right next to the wall, which most people use for transportation. Nobody had cars back then. So they found one of these, they restored it. So this is a 1941 Weiss Manfred. It's a Hungarian factory which was manufacturing motorcycles and bicycles. So this one is displayed just like it was before. And on the wall, you can see several advertisements in the original fashion, the way they seen it on early photographs. They found these old stickers the way it was up. So local businesses, they're cross-advertising each other. So this was a place where the local businesses were allowed to put up their ads. And they basically copied old photographs. And there are some more contemporary newspaper cutouts where you can see contemporary ads from the era. In this next room, these cars belong to several club members. So these are club member cars on display. The first one is, he called it a doctor's coupe. And this one has somewhat original color, whatever left of it. And he's trying to give them a home for the winter time. In the summertime, they take them back, and then they go riding with it. And the next one is a pickup truck. And one of the club members has Harley Davidsons. And that's why he changed it to a pickup truck configuration and put the Harley Davidson service sign on it. So it goes around in this Harley meets, and then everybody's really excited to see the old Lizzie with a Harley paint job running around. And I was explaining that it's really easy to change the configuration from a touring to anything else. So basically the front part is just like a touring, and on the back you can just remove the back part of the whole thing and then attach like a pickup truck body or anything else. They made million different configuration options for these aftermarket, mostly out of wood. This one is actually looks like it's out of metal, but you can put anything on the back, whatever you desire or whatever your need was. So that was a very versatile vehicle. There were larger pickup trucks. They were the TTs. This is not a TT. This is just a regular T. Those were larger and they were a little bit different. But the rear axle, they were a lot slower. But going back to the Dr. Scoop, he was showing us how this looks like. So when you open the door, it was basically a more friendly environment than an open car. They like to use that in cities where they were able to actually lock the car, and then you have a roll down window and all the extras you can imagine. But the dashboard is still only consisted of the switches and then the amp meter. If you look at it, the amp meter was showing you which way the charging is going into the battery or out of the battery. That was basically the only thing. It had the air conditioner where you can open up the windshield, and then the wind will come in and blow your hair, I guess. But it was still a very basic car, so to speak. It did have a key which goes into this hole right here, and there was also the light switch on the left, the combined ignition and light switch, and you can turn it over to magneto. You could start on the battery too, and then turn it over to magneto when the engine was running. Or like in my car where the magneto is all not working anymore, you can just run it on the battery. It still runs more or less fine, but it's a lot less spark, a lot less voltage on it. And then as we're going back, there is a little trunk compartment. No, it's not a rumble seat. Later on, they looked just like that, but the rumble seat came a little bit later. And then you can see it's got a Mexican license plate from Tabasco County. I don't know how that got here and what's the story behind this. Maybe they went there for one vacation. I don't know. I don't know if this original. Some Model T guys, please tell me, do you recognize that light, position light on the side? And there is some trafficator. This is a mechanical trafficator, which was showing you which way you're going to turn. There was no signal lights. I believe that's a later addition to it. You can see the green part was lit up, and you can mechanically adjust it from the inside which way you want it to turn. I don't know how other people were seeing that, but for a while it was a requirement in Hungary, but it was usually an electromagnetic device. The reason why the top is made out of fabric and chicken wire and wood, because back then the car manufacturers were unable to press out that large of a piece of metal from one sheet, so they were substituting that with these organic materials. And this next touring has every accessory money can buy. So I told them this grid is not exactly at the right position. They used to put it where they wanted to hold a suitcase on or some sort of extra things on, but you put it where the spare tire is. And it looks like it's got a really nice paint job and a trunk. So early on, the cars were able to put an extra trunk there, and that's where the trunk word came from for the modern cars. It's got two different speedometers. I'm not sure why you need two of them. The Model Ts didn't have any, and everybody was happy at the same time. Then you got a mechanical horn, and in the front you can see where the pickup is for the speedometers. There's a big gear there. That's a really interesting aftermarket accessory to me, because you can see the big gear turning the cable, and that's how it's showing. This is also an aftermarket spring. Everybody was swearing by that it's going to make it smoother or make it more stable or something. But this is also an aftermarket accessory. As I understand, Henry Ford was really excited about reading all these accessories. There was a whole book full of them, and it was not made by Ford. It was made by different little manufacturers who did this. Now, when you crank, be careful not to hold it like this, because you're going to lose your thumb. You got to make sure your thumb is protected, so hold it like this. So if it kicks back, it will not take your thumb off. There's a friend of mine in a College Station who was very young when he started Model Ts, and then he got his tongue basically broke out. So it can be dangerous. You got to be careful. You can see this is the older version, the older fenders. And my car actually have these older fenders for some reason. On the right, you can see the newer kind of fender where they've been pushed out from one piece. And I didn't even know that for a long time, but I was still happy with it. Very nicely, newly done wooden spokes, and it's kind of hard to get it done right, but looks like they did it fine over here. So it's very solid as long as you're not trying to side load it. So when you side load the car, for whatever reason, they can actually break out, but as long as you go straight and forward, it's fine. There was a tea tour on one of the tea parties down in Texas, and then one of the kid was driving a Model T with his mom, and then they go into a ditch, and just as they went in, the kid got scared, pulled the wheel to the left, and the front wheels broke out because it got stuck on something, and then the whole car rolled down on the side of the little bluff, and then they actually survived, but it was very scary. So you got to be careful how much side loading you put on the wooden wheels. Otherwise, they're pretty sturdy. There's a very special certificate which came from the Hungarian Academy of Sciences in 2016 when they recognized Joseph Galam's work in the Model T. So the family actually donated this national certificate to the museum to display it here. This is a very special award. Only very recognized people would receive it in Hungary. As we're moving forward, you can see some period clothing, which I really like to see when you drive an old car. It is a pretty cool stuff to dress up what goes with the car. Just like Zsolti outside, he dressed up. He freezed to death, by the way, because it's really freezing, but at least he dressed up and he had the pipe and everything going. But you can see a little display of the local, the contemporary clothing. I was asking about the wall, what's on the wall here. There are several pictures and several articles about the Model T and, of course, Henry Ford. And it's concentrating on all the invention, what was came out of the Model T and different versions of the Model T. But more specifically, those Hungarians who worked in the development of this magnificent car. Like we said earlier, this engineering group was headed by Joseph Kalam, but there were other Hungarians in the group, like Károly Balog and Jenő Farkas, or Farkas Jenő. Balog Károly actually was born not too far from here. And then most of the patents were going under Ford, obviously, because they were working for Ford. But later on, some of them actually got out of it, and then they went actually on their own, like Károly Balog. You can see his picture here. He later on owned Hercules airplane factory, and they also made truck engines and other things. I'm not totally clear what else they were doing, but yeah, he definitely came out from Hungary with Joseph Galamb to look at the World Fair, and that's where the whole journey began. So he was a very prominent engineer in the Ford factory, and then later on went over to Hercules, and then they also not only made airplane engines but bicycles too. Now he has a grandkid named Bruce, and Bruce had a whole bunch of relics but donated to this museum. So he was very happy to see that there was a museum dedicated for Joseph Galamb and the Model T. So here's Bruce in on one of the Fords. So Bruce is the grandchild of Károly Balog, and he promised that he one day he will come and look at this museum. So Bruce, if you watch it, they're really waiting for you over here to check it out. It would mean a lot for these guys if you would come and see this. The other person who worked under Joseph Galamb was Jenő Farkas, and then he helped developed also part of the Model T, and later on the Model A and the V8 engine, what the later models will have. And he also worked at Maxwell, and Maxwell, you can see there's not that far from the Model T. So basically, that was the reason. But he worked there as well. Next, they set up a sample office of the Galamb brothers using contemporary furniture and a typewriter and a telephone and other stuff, which you can see here. And he's inviting everyone to come and look at how Joseph Galamb was connected to his family, how they lived, and how they connected to Henry Ford himself. And they made a little bit of an exhibition of that. The museum displayed some letters where they exchanged between the US and Hungary. what they exchanged between the brothers, how they were riding to each other. And after all these history and Model Ts, there is another part of this museum where they're displaying a whole bunch of motorcycles. Not all of them belong to the museum. It's mostly belong to the members of the museum, and some are actually privately owned by him and his dad. But here's MZ from East Germany, and that's owned by Zsolti, who is outside with the Model T dressed up and freezing to death right now. Then there's an MZ trophy. Those are also East German motorcycles, a Simpson, but I really remember that. I had several of these. These are East German motorcycles. There is a Berlin scooter, which he's saying that it's really not a good scooter. But there was one in Washington, D.C. on the Trabant show, but a friend of mine from Canada actually brought over. Then there is a Simpson. This Simpson, I have one in the U.S., in Kentucky, one of these. This is a 425 Ovo, and next to it there's a nice sidecar. But Laszlo is telling us that this Berlin is really not a well used or usable scooter at all. From here on are the West German motorcycle section. He's saying his dad has another BMW with a sidecar, which sometimes sits here. So there are several BMWs and other West German motorcycles are displayed here. Several other club members also have some BMWs, which sometimes they reside here. And then here's what they started the classic motorcycle craze. It's a Triumph, a British car which was made in Germany, in Nuremberg. So they call it the Nuremberg Triumph for some reason. The factory's name was TWN. And then this one is a 250. And from here on, we're going to pass over to the Hungarian motorcycles. The sidecar was actually made not too far from here in Szeged, the city of Szeged, and that's an OK3 designated sidecar. It was very popular. And then a T5 next to it, it's a Pannonia T5. And as we're moving forward, there is a P20, which was almost a P21. This is also a Pannonia. They exported those, 1970s yellow color, and they actually exported them to the US in very small numbers. Somebody found some in Canada and then brought it back to Hungary. This black one is a Pannonia, also a P20, with a very interesting front flaring on the light. That wasn't too usual, and there's a little bug catcher on it as well. And then there is a limited production T9. That's also a Hungarian-made Pannonia motorcycle and a very interesting color scheme. He's saying that they're using Japanese electric components to make the ignition more reliable. And on this motorcycle, where you see it's silver, it's supposed to be chromed, but he's saying that the tank was so badly rusted and rotten that they couldn't actually make it to the chrome shop. That's why they painted it silver. This motorcycle belongs to Laszlo's family, and that's how the kids grew up using they basically grew up in this sidecar, and they always went to classic car meets and shows, and that's how his kids grew up, he's saying. Hopefully the kids will continue on with these and not gonna sell it when they inherit it all. That's some unfortunate. It's a common thing. And here's an early Pannonia where the silencer was not all that quiet. That quietness came later. And there are some nice helmets and a nice little suitcase with basically going displayed there. Now, I think if you drive one of these, you should have the appropriate helmet with it. I know it's not as safe as the new helmets, but it's probably would look a lot better. This TLS Pannonia wears its original paint and the original lines, and next to it was a very popular version, the color scheme. And this is a TLB with an OK2 sidecar. It's a funny name in English, OK2, but that was the thing. And then my friend's Jolti's motorcycle also, there's a TL Pannonia, and that has that age-appropriate color. Behind it, there is a Berva. It was a Berva moped, and then Dongo Chapel bicycle with a little engine on it. And these pictures are of Laszlo's parents when they were young, and they were driving a Trabi, and then they were driving motorcycles. These are the pictures sitting on the wall. After World War II in the communism, it was first it was illegal to privately own a car, and then later on they eased that, and then you were able to have a motorcycle. That's when they started to make these motorcycles. This is a Danovia. It's also a Hungarian brand, just like the Pannonia, what we seen earlier. The postal service received the green ones. You're able to buy black one or this burgundy color. So there's a few examples of those. And next to the Danovia, there is a little scooter called a Panni. It was an ill-fated attempt to copy the Vespa scooters, which become very popular all around the world. So the Hungarian motorcycle manufacturers tried to mimic that, and it was a really unreliable piece of machinery. Although I seen a couple last two summers ago, we actually went on a road trip with them, very nicely restored, and they actually got where they were going. So I was very surprised because I only heard bad things about these ponies when I was young and I was trying to get one, and everybody was telling me don't get one because it's gonna break down on you. It's not a good motorcycle, but it's nice to see it in a museum like this. So Laszlo is saying kind of jokingly that if you own a pony, you will learn how to fix a motorcycle. Then there is some D Chapels. Chapel was also a Hungarian brand, and first one was an export edition. The other one is a regular Hungarian edition. And then here is this one with a silver tank. I actually bought one of these and brought it back to Texas, and then I was riding around in Texas with it, and then I traded it for a Triumph, or I don't know what happened to it, but I believe it's still in Texas or it's somewhere out there, and it's like a 150cc motorcycle. The green and black one is also a Chapel. It's a 125/50. They were exporting them to Scandinavian countries in this color scheme, and it was quite popular there. It wasn't too bad of a bike, but it's like, yeah, it did needed periodic repairs, just like any other old motorcycle. You can change that seat to a baggage compartment on the back on the rear fender. And this is actually where the Hungarian motorcycle lineup starts with this 1938. It's a Weiss Manfred 100 Chapel, which was a very early try to basically manufacture Hungarian motorcycles. There's a Weiss Manfred sign on the front fender, and then somebody in the club restored this bike to be able to show it. So this is the first step in all of the first step in the lineup of the Hungarian motorcycles. I never ever seen one of these before anywhere else. It's interesting that the spring is coming in the seat and the rear wheel is not sprung. And on the other side, there is a larger motorcycle. It's a 250 Mérei, and it's a shaft-driven motorcycle. Weiss Manfred and Mérei was two large motorcycle manufacturer, and then they had an agreement that the Weiss Manfred will make the small ones, and then the Mérei will do the larger motorcycles. So there's not too many of these actually were made. And one of his friends had this one displayed in his office, and then he decided that would be a lot better place in the museum. So he basically let the museum display it for him. And then there is a Velosolex. It's like a French design. And when I was in France at the La Police show, which I made several videos of, there was a whole bunch of people running around with that. The significance of this, that it was manufactured in Hungary not too long ago, maybe like 20 years ago. And that's why it's here. Then from here on, these burgundy colored bikes are from the Czechoslovakia. The first one is a a Java Pioneer, and then there is a CZ or a Setka motorcycles after that. The Java and the CZ was two different company. So, but they brought a whole bunch of CZs to the U.S. I seen one in Denver and in other places, and then from there is a Java with a Java sidecar, and surprisingly, you still can buy those sidecars at certain Harley dealerships, and then they put them next to Harley Davidsons, and they all kind of have the same color. The sidecar is made by the Verolex company, and it's a 562 number sidecar, by the way. And the last bikes are from Russia. This one is an Ij with a sidecar. And then next to it, it's a Ural. And I had one of these Urals in Texas, and I had a lot of fun with it. We took the kids for trick-or-treating, and then they sat in the sidecar. We pulled up to a house, and they went trick-or-treating. Then they dumped the bucket into the sidecar, and then off we went. Later on, it's become too small for my kids, so actually I traded it to a Model T. So that's where my Model T connection comes in. So this car, this motorcycle, what I had some kind of similar color. It's most likely still in Arkansas, where I traded it for a Model T. And this last motorcycle is an East German MZ or MZ, and then they try to make it look like a military one. I think the seats are not exactly correct, like the original military motorcycle looked like, but they were trying to make a little East German corner here with this military-looking bike. So now that we are done in this part, we're gonna head over to the next place. There is a little courtyard between the two buildings, and there are some really interesting cars sitting there, which I seen it earlier when I came in. So let's just go over there and then check them out. Like the first one on the left, this little car is a Zaporozhets. It has an air-cooled V4 engine in it in the back, and it looks very similar to an NSU, but it's not an NSU. I had a friend in a who actually went to the factory when they were making these cars. They chopped the roof off of it, and they put the two big gas tanks in the back, propane, acetylene gas tanks in the back. And then instead of the built cars moving around, they actually moved around the assembly line. Looks like it has new tires, and it's a very nicely remained car in original condition. And you still can buy one of these. I never seen one running. It's they are broken for whatever reason, so they're not exactly a usable good car. Yeah, these are belong to one of the club members as well. And as we're moving forward, there's an Opel. It's a 1962 61 P2, and it's a second version of these panoramic windows. And my uncle had a couple, had a coupe, I had a limousine, a two-door sedan, and then I had a whole bunch of these when I was growing up. These are non-original lights on it, and then there's a lot of things that are incorrect on this car, but at least it's here. When they were new, they used the hell out of them. They basically built houses and carried cement in the back, and then they got a lot of abuse. And Opel is actually owned by General Motors, and that was the German counterpart. You can see the shifter is usually a three-speed shifter on it, three on the tree, I would say, just like my Ford F100. And it's very exciting for me to see one of these, although there's a lot of things are incorrect, and it has missing pieces like the Opel sign on it. And this is their family's Volkswagen Beetle. I asked what's up with that, and then he said that they bought it so they can go to classic car shows with the kids. And I think his dad bought it a long time ago, so they also have one of these older Beetles. And then he's telling the stories how they grew up in it, and then they had a lot of fun driving this around. And I was asking what is this next to it, and apparently there were two motorcycles what they built, and that was some sort of a biker building competition where they built these two motorcycles, and then one actually wins some trophies, and then the other one is a newer version. It has all kind of weird parts in it, but it looks very futuristic if you look at it. There is some Robur parts in it. Robur was an East German little bus, and other various motorcycles, basically what they were able to find. And then this one is also a newly built piece for that biker builder competition. And I think it looks great. I don't know if it works, but it looks great. I think I would love to drive this one to the local diner in North Middletown. I think these motorcycles deserve a lot nicer place than in the corner here. I think it looks really super nice. So this one has a Harley transmission and some sort of Robur cylinder head out of that Robur truck or a Robur bus. But I think it looks great. I think it should be lifted up somewhere and then lit up nicely, and then should be a centerpiece in the motorcycle part of the museum. Very, very exciting to see. Something like this unexpected to see next to a Model Ts and a Volkswagen Beetle, some of these. Now we're outside at the street, and this part of the building was built after the Golan brothers finished their operation, and it used to be some sort of textile company. place, and then they all went bankrupt, and then the club purchased it, and now they having this is what you see when you come through the main door. And when I was there, I seen a whole bunch of kids come in and see uh, all these nice articles. The first part you can see some nice displays of the heritage of this place, and this on the right, this guy designed a whole bunch of different structures in the city of Mako, like that water tower is sitting at the other side of the opposite side of this building. And as we enter, we kind of ease into this retro stuff because they collected a whole bunch of things from the not too distant past, like this Russian-built Moskvich pedal car, which now I finally have one. My cousin had one. I mean, when we were growing up, my parents weren't rich enough to buy me one, so he had one, but I never did. But now finally I bought one. There are several TVs and radios what the Hungarians like myself grew up with, so I kind of have connections to all of this, or mostly all of this. There are some old radios which my grandparents had, and there are some strollers. Some of these strollers actually for carrying babies, and then there is a toy one further down where what made for kids to play with. And there are some more radios. All of these things came in from people donating it to the museum. So it's very interesting. Here is that one what kids can play with, and there is a television which will make a great aquarium. There's a really early television made in Hungary, and there are some toys. Now, this television tend to explode. It was the first color television in Hungary, and then there were several explosions where the tube actually exploded on the viewers. That was not a pleasant thing to watch, I guess. There's some old, very popular 1960s furniture. So now with this, I really appreciate that you let us in and show us the museum. And the museum can be viewed. You need to you either come on the weekend if you ever go to the city of Mako, or you need to basically arrange it before you come and talk to the museum. They have a website, and that's their website. Please check it out or send them a message. You can write in English if you want. If you ever come to Hungary, please come and visit. Now I ask him to let's go outside and hear these machines go. Thanks for watching, and see you guys 2 weeks from now. Bye.